I'm Tom Morrow, and welcome to BMB Primetime Fantasy Report, where we have all the scores for Week 7 in the NFL.
I'm Sean McClellan, and I'll tell you how bad the Jets lost again.
I'm Matt Matto, and we have your injury report for the week.
I'm Finnegan Corcoran-Doolan, and we have your In the Stands interview.
Hello and welcome to BMB's Primetime Fantasy Report. We'll start off on last Thursday's game where the Eagles defeated the Giants 22-21. The Giants had a 21-10 lead with under 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and it all went down from there. Carson Wentz is BMB's Primetime Fantasy Report player of the game with 359 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. With that loss, the Giants take the last spot in the division as Philadelphia slides into the number 1 spot of the NFC East. I think, the main takeaway was the turf monster who made another appearance on Daniel Jones, where Jones ran for 80 yards, then completely flopped. No one knows why.
Moving over to one of Sunday's afternoon games, the Atlanta Falcons hosted the Detroit Lions, where the Lions came out on top 23-22, another nail-biter. Both quarterbacks Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford threw for over 300-plus yards and had a touchdown each. Stafford threw a game-winning touchdown, and it all just happened in about 8 plays, 75 yards, and just took about 1 minute in that big Detroit Lions win.
A game that wasn't a nail-biter was the Buffalo Bills visiting MetLife Stadium, where they beat the New York Jets 18-10. The Jets still remain the only winless team in the NFL. Josh Allen got off to a slow start, but then picked things up and finished his day with 307 passing yards, and 112 of those 307 yards were caught by veteran receiver Cole Beasley.
This AFC North battle saw the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns shut the door on the Bengals and took the victory 37-34. Both quarterbacks Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield combined for 8 touchdown passes and 700-plus yards in the air. Baker Mayfield was trailing 34-31 and threw one of his 5 touchdowns with under a minute to go in the game to rookie receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones to get his first touchdown catch of this season.
Another fantastic game is between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans. Both teams came into this game undefeated, and one team came out with a loss. The Steelers beat the Titans 27-24. Joining us now is longtime Steeler fan, Ms. Kalish. Welcome to the show, Ms. K.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
No problem. So what made you become a Steelers fan?
Well, I grew up in a house where football was very much appreciated, but no one ever took the time to explain it to me. So I wasn't really a fan growing up because I didn't understand the game. And then I got to college, and a friend of mine in college was from the Pittsburgh area and was a huge Steelers fan. And he had no problem sitting down with me and explaining the game. So the first time I really sat and understood a football game was while watching the Steelers play. And then he continued to let me hang out with him on Sundays and watch and learn. And so I just became a fan of football while watching the Steelers. So it was kind of just a natural progression to then become a Steelers fan.
With the Steelers' upcoming schedule, does any game worry you?
Not really. We are the undefeated team right now in our, our area, and the teams coming up are, not that great. I would say, if anything, I'm a little worried about the Ravens game because of the rivalry we have going there, and down the road, I'm not going to say I'm worried, but we do face the Jaguars, and, I'm worried about Tyler Davis coming in and showing us up.
So, Ms. Kalish, Ben Roethlisberger is playing extremely well for his age. What do you think gave him this youthful energy?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's his teammates always, having great ball control and having great defense to make his job easier. I think it's also a combination of the fact that, he gets hurt a lot. And then when he gets hurt, he doesn't have to play. And so, in his career, he's probably only played about half the time.
Yeah, he's an injury type quarterback. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, next week the Steelers take on the 5-1 Baltimore Ravens. And what are you predicting for this game? You think they're going to come out 7-0 undefeated, or you think they might take their first loss,
All right, so let's be real. I'm obviously hoping they win. But if I'm being honest and I reflect back on past years, we play the we play the Ravens twice every season, and they are a great team. It's always been a strong rivalry, and we tend to split the season. It's usually 1-1. Historically, it's usually whoever's in their home field. So, I obviously want to win, and I know at the moment we are on top of them, but I can't make any guarantees. So hopefully at the very least we split the season again. I would love to see them win twice, but can't always get what we want.
All right. Well, I wish the Steelers the best of luck this Sunday afternoon, and thank you for joining us on the show, Ms. Kalish. And now back to you, Sean.
Another first window game on Sunday saw the Green Bay Packers visit the Houston Texans. The Packers came out on top 35-20, bouncing back from last week's loss against the Buccaneers. The Packers had a field day, mainly Aaron Rodgers and Devonte Adams. Rodgers threw for 283 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Devonte Adams had 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Packers, it was a good get-well game after a tough loss last week to Tampa Bay. And for Houston, they're still struggling with only 1 win and 6 losses. Let's see if they can turn it around.
We go from the Giants and the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Washington football team in this past week's other NFC East showdown. Washington obliterated the Cowboys 25-3. Terry McLaurin had a breakout game with 90 yards and a touchdown. This was the first week where the Washington football team held their opponent out of the end zone. Even the Jets scored more points than the Cowboys this past week, and that says something.
The last first windows games saw a battle in the NFC South. The Saints and the Panthers went head-to-head, and it was the Saints coming out on top in this one, 27-24. Breeze was able to do his thing and lead the Saints to a victory with 250-plus passing yards and a pair of touchdowns.
The first game in the second window was a rough one for the Las Vegas Raiders. They hosted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where the Bucs defeated the Raiders 45-20. Tom Brady and the Bucs offense lit up the field Sunday afternoon. Brady was having a day out there with 369 passing yards and 4 touchdowns and may be slowly entering the MVP of the season if he continues to play the way he is. On the other hand, Antonio Brown will be clear and set to go for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Week 9 against the New Orleans Saints as long as he passes the COVID-19 protocols.
The first snow game of the 2020 NFL season is here. This past Sunday, it was right in Denver, where they hosted the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs played great all around, and rushing, it was rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 1 rushing touchdown, and then Mahomes to Tyreek Hill for 1 touchdown as well. Then it was Byron Pringle's 102-yard kick return touchdown, and then the defense with the pick 6. It was an all-around great game for the Chiefs, but they take on the Jets next week, and I'm still deciding if I think they're going to be scoring maybe 50-plus points next week. Patrick Mahomes now has more career wins in Denver than Drew Lock, making it the 10th consecutive time the Kansas City Chiefs have defeated the Denver Broncos.
It was a tough day to not only be a Broncos fan, but also a New England Patriots fan, like I am. 33-6 was the final of the Patriots versus 49ers game that took place in the late window of this past Sunday. Jeff Wilson Jr. ran all over the Patriots defense with 12 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had himself a day. The Patriots wound up benching Cam Newton late in the game and are still trying to figure things out as a whole. This is the first time the Patriots have lost 3 straight games since 2002. The way I see it, the Patriots have a huge crossroads ahead. With the trade deadline looming, they have 2 options: either trade for a receiver and try and make a run, or sell some assets away and try and tank.
The last second window game saw the Los Angeles Chargers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The rookie quarterback Justin Herbert had 347 yards through the air and 3 touchdowns. Herbert found veteran receiver Keenan Allen 10 times in the afternoon for 125 yards. The Chargers went on to win 39-29, but Herbert is really shaping up to be a future franchise QB for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Folks, that Sunday night primetime football game was one of the best games of the 2020 season so far, in my opinion. Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray battling it out, combined for 700-plus passing yards and 3 touchdowns each. Tyler Lockett broke out and had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns receiving, a hat trick for himself. On the other hand, DeAndre Hopkins had 1 touchdown and 103 receiving yards and a touchdown while Christian Kirk racked up the other 2 touchdowns. It came down to overtime where Zane Gonzalez, the Cardinals kicker, knocked in a 48-yard field goal to win it, and that's where the Cardinals broke it loose and beat the Seahawks.
The Bears took their second loss of the season when the Los Angeles Rams defeated them in their new SoFi Stadium 24-10. The Bears' offense and defense never got the ball rolling, and the Rams just outplayed them. There have been a lot of upsets Bears fans after Nick Foles' performance. Some were even asking for Mitch Trubisky to be put in, and that's saying something. We'll have to see what the future holds for both Bears quarterbacks.
Switching gears, there have been some more injuries to report. Major injury this week is Cleveland Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., who is now out for the rest of the season with an ACL tear. This is a season-ending injury for OBJ, who has also been very vocal about his dislike as a part of the Browns organization. We wish OBJ a speedy recovery.
Another major injury comes from, once again, the Dallas Cowboys, where backup QB Andy Dalton took a rough blow to the head. Dalton was diagnosed with a concussion, but seems not to be too serious of a concussion. This injury means the Cowboys will now be using their third-string QB, Ben DiNucci.
For the Pittsburgh Steelers, Diontae Johnson, who has a little ankle fracture, it is currently reported that it is not too serious. Another not serious injury comes from the 49ers, where Deebo Samuel is reported to miss the next 2 games with a pulled hamstring.
The next 2 injuries will affect your fantasy league, or even your own fantasy team, especially mine. Coming from the Seattle Seahawks, it's running back Chris Carson, who injured himself in the first half with a foot injury. The other player comes from the same game, where the Cardinals running back Kenyon Drake with an ankle injury. We hope all these players rest up and have a speedy recovery.
Although those guys may be out for a bit and may affect your fantasy team negatively, these players are sure to affect your fantasy team positively. In 5th place with most fantasy points, it's Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady threw 4 touchdowns and 369 yards en route to 36.86 points.
In our 4th spot from the Cardinals, it is QB Kyler Murray, who racked up 37.9 points and threw for 360 yards and had 3 touchdowns.
In our 3rd spot, scoring 38.48 points, it's rookie quarterback Justin Herbert from the Los Angeles Chargers. The rookie threw for 347 yards and threw for 3 touchdowns and ran in for 1 touchdown himself.
In our runner-up spot from the Green Bay Packers, it's Devonte Adams, who had an incredible week, scoring 44 points. Adams was Rodgers' target 13 times. Adams scored 2 touchdowns and ran for 196 yards.
And in 1st place from the Seattle Seahawks, it's none other than Tyler Lockett, who scored 53 points this past Sunday in fantasy. Lockett was on fire. He scored 3 touchdowns and ran for 200 yards. Congratulations to a great game from all these players.
On to our final segment. It's where we talk about our own fantasy team, where in my case, I stayed undefeated, defeating Mahomes Depot 93-86. Look, I'm going to shoot all you guys straight. I got hard carried by Kyler Murray. He was the only player on my team who scored more than 20 points. He scored 37.1. That's a good third of my points. The only other player who had a decent showing was Julio Jones with 17 and Amari Cooper with 15. But other than that, I did not deserve to win. I did not deserve to win, but hey, a win's a win. How about you, Tom?
You know what, Mano? I did take the win. I actually beat your brother, Mano. And, you know, my fantasy top players were DeAndre Hopkins, 103 receiving yards and a touchdown, and it was Deshaun Watson, 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara was up there, 83 rushing yards, 65 receiving. And then we talked about him earlier in the show when they versed the Jets. Cole Beasley, veteran receiver. He had 11 receptions, 112 yards. I took the win this week, 129-107. I moved to 5-2. And how about yourself, Finn?
Yeah, well, this week I actually won again. So I've now won 2 games in a row after taking a few losses. The score was 118 fantasy points to 98 fantasy points. I got straight carried by 2 people. I got carried by Devonte Adams. He got 44 fantasy points. This was his most this season on fantasy points. And the other player who carried me was Joe Burrow, the rookie QB from Cincinnati. He got me 33 fantasy points, 406 passing yards with 4 touchdowns. and he did really, really well. And I guess if you had to put a third player in there, Travis Fulgham played really well for me too. He had 73 yards too. Yeah, this was a good week in fantasy for me.
Well, Finn, my teams in fantasy and in the real world, speaking in NFL, can never catch a break anymore. I suffered a big loss this week to the Oracle at a score of 128 to 147. My top 4 players were Giovanni Bernard, Antonio Gibson, Rob Gronkowski, and Matt Ryan. And the only positive about this week is that Rob Gronkowski is starting to get back to his final form once again.
Thanks for joining us for Week 7 in the NFL. I've been Matt Manna, and I really need the Pats to win this week.
I'm Finnegan Corcoran-Doolin, and I'm nervous for Big Blue to battle Tom Brady and the Bucs. Maybe Jones will be the next Giants QB, and that gives Brady difficulties, only if he stays on his feet.
I'm Sean McClellan, and I'll tell you once again how the Jets lose horribly next week.
And I'm Tom Morrow, and we'll see you next week on BMB's Primetime Fantasy Report.